Welcome back to the Real Slim Fady Show. I am your host, Fady Hawatma. Could not be more excited. Episode 1, Season 2. Here we go. So obviously, I've been gone for a little while. We had a good run for Season 1. And if you're listening to this, that means either you have kept track of the Real Slim Fady Show and you're coming back, which is amazing and unbelievable. So thank you. Or you've stumbled into this and you have no idea who I am. Either way, this is going to be an episode going back to the roots of the Real Slim Fady Show. It's going to be a super honest conversation, not a polished one, very raw, real. So quick context, I'm Fady Hawatma. I was born in Amman, Jordan. I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri. Long story of how that happened that I'll share at some point. And I've been building and running startups for over a decade now. I started off my career at Boeing in FP&A and strategy. After Boeing, I went into oil and gas consulting. And really, what it comes down to is I've raised money, I've lost sleep, I've gained weight, I've lost weight. At some point along the journey, I decided to turn on a microphone and talk about it and talk about all of it, the goods, the bads, and everything in between. And so for the people who were here for Season 1, I'll walk through kind of why I disappeared after 20 something episodes. And I think the reason why matters more than the absence itself. And so going back to why I even started the podcast, I feel like now it's such a douchey thing that every bro opens up a podcast and turns it on. And I need to rewind back to 2022 and remind everyone here why the mic got turned on in the first place. So 2022, we had just raised our first venture-backed round for Clockwork. I was deep in building Clockwork, deep in scaling the team, hiring employees, finding our market product fit, running yet another VC-backed company. I had just gone through the first half, I would say, of a massive personal transformation, a health transformation. I lost just about 50 pounds at that point. Now I'm just shy of 100 pounds. And something about that transformation unlocked something mentally for me. And I felt like I had things to say that I've been holding back for years. And that's where the Real Slim Fady Show came from, right? The podcast was born from a simple idea. You're not alone. You're not alone in your struggles, whether it's fundraising, whether it's battling imposter syndrome, building a company, scaling a company, good employees, bad employees, trying to be a good founder, trying to be a good entrepreneur, being a good human at the same time, a good son, a good brother. And I remember the exact feeling that sparked it. I was scrolling through all these business podcasts and everything felt so bullshit, so curated, so polished. Everyone had it all figured out. And they're running these companies making billions of dollars and here trying to tell me how to scale. And for me, I'm running a company and I have no idea if I'm making the right decisions half the time. No one is talking about that, the messy middle, the 2 a.m. anxiety, the board meetings where you just get absolutely destroyed, but you're still trying to project confidence and the vision and everything that you're doing while internally you're running the numbers on little runway. And it was supposed to be raw, unfiltered, real, totally vulnerable. And that's who I am. I'm an open book. And so the stuff that no one talks about on LinkedIn, all the bullshit posts that you see there. And I wanted someone listening on their commute to feel like, hey, they had a friend, someone who knew what they were going through or even could share what that next step looks like. And the name itself, it's an homage to Eminem. And I grew up listening to Eminem, and it was about being unapologetically myself, saying the things that other people think but won't say out loud. And M built his entire career on refusing to be anything other than who he is, even when the entire world told him to tone it down. That resonated with me on a deep level, and it's always resonated with me. I grew up listening to Pac and Eminem pretty much exclusively, and Dre, and I also chose the name because it's a little ridiculous, right? And that was the point. I always joked, like, what happens one day if I get a cease and desist from the Real Slim Shady? And I don't want this to feel like another serious bullshit podcast with some business and some generic name. I wanted to have personality. I wanted to have my personality. And the whole point was to be the podcast I wished existed when I was grinding it out alone and had no idea any of this was right. And that's really where this Real Slim Fady Show came from. And so now really getting back to the vulnerable me, the vulnerable fatty, the real Slim Fady. And so season 1 honestly started off super strong. It was so exciting. I loved it. It was my creative outlet. You're working 15, 16-hour days, and it was an outlet for me. And the early on episodes about bootstrapping versus VC funding, raising money, mental health, those felt like me. I could get on and be myself. I was recording them, honestly, most of them off the cuff, just talking through things I was actually living. I would have a couple bullet points, a couple outlines, but I would riff the majority of the conversations. And people responded really well to that. And the DMs I got after some of those episodes were some of the most meaningful feedback I've ever gotten on anything in my life. And that was amazing. But then something shifted, right? The podcast started getting a little traction, and Clockwork started getting a little more traction. And with traction comes opinions. Team members, investors, a lot of people get involved. You know, people always said you should have bigger guests, you should have names people recognize, you should have people that could be customers, you should build pipeline, build prospects, you need to follow this trending thing or else the algorithm won't pick you up, or make it more polished, make it more professional, you're doing it in your bedroom, all that kind of stuff. Like more like all these other podcasts that you see popping up that are super well put together. And for me, none of that advice was wrong. Absolutely not. They probably were the right way. And if the goal was to build some media brand, that's exactly what you do. You focus on all that stuff. But that was never the goal for the Real Slim Fady Show. Clockwork has always been the goal. That was always the priority, the mission. The goal was to have honest conversations on the Real Slim Fady Show. And I lost sight of that because I started measuring success the way everyone else measured it, the way everyone else told me I should measure it. Pipeline created, meetings, demos, downloads, followers, impressions, all this stuff we started putting on my LinkedIn. And I started planning episodes around what I thought were going to perform or what I heard was going to perform rather than what I actually wanted to talk about. And I'd have a real story I wanted to share, something raw from my week at Clockwork with employees, investors, all the different stuff. And I talked myself out of it because I get in my own head and I didn't think it was quote unquote big enough for an episode or people would judge me for it. And that's when I knew that something was broken. And on top of that, I'm obviously running a startup. Clockwork was demanding every ounce of my energy. And you think a company takes, imagine if it's your own company. And so when the podcast stopped being something that energized me, that gave me an outlet, that excited me, that gave me fuel, started being another thing on my list, on my to-do list, like, oh, shoot, I have to do this. I would have calendar invites for record your podcast. And I didn't have the bandwidth to push it. It was burnout. It was misalignment. Misalignment causes burnout. When you do something you love, you don't get burnt out. And it was doing something that I felt was no longer mine. And the irony of it was a podcast literally named after being the real me became the least authentic thing I was doing. I was performing, right? And I knew it. I would get on and I knew people would hear it. There's a reason why I didn't release a lot of episodes because I didn't feel proud of them. I wasn't excited about them. And at some point I realized I was dreading recording instead of looking forward to it. And that for me was the signal. That's when I was like, all right, I'm just going to shut it down. And I put it behind the misnomer of season 1, it was ending. And when the thing I built to express myself becomes the thing I was avoiding, I had to be honest about what happened. And I named this thing the Real Slim Fady Show. And then I let everyone else write the script. And that's legitimately not just ironic. That's the opposite of why I even started it. And so that's why I'm really excited about season 2 is now it's back to the Real Slim Fady Show. I moved back to Chicago, the city that I absolutely love, because I've been moving to be the real me more than I have in a long time. And the absence turned into a lesson. This is where stepping away wasn't quitting the Real Slim Fady Show. It was never quitting. And it was necessary. And it was the most founder-like decision I had to make about the podcast. I recognized a bad market product fit. And the product being inauthentic content, the market being myself. And any good founder knows you have to pivot. When things aren't working, you have to pivot, you have to shift, you have to do something. You don't just keep pushing harder. That's not how it works. And so you step back and you figure out why and what happened. And the funny thing is, running Clockwork taught me that the best decisions come from conviction, not consensus. And all the times that I made decisions that everyone agreed to, I'm like, oh shit, I don't actually, that's not my gut, right? I would do it. And I preach that to my team now all the time. I tell founders that I advise all the time. And I completely forgot to apply it to my own show. And it's so easy to see it clearly when it's someone else's business, someone else's idea, someone else's thing, someone else's team, and completely miss it when it's your own thing, the fresh set of eyes. And here's the parallel to entrepreneurship that I want every founder, entrepreneur, or anyone listening to sit with. Every single one of us faces a moment where advisors, friends, investors, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, all the social media you want, your co-founders, colleges, roommates, dog, everything. Everyone has an opinion about what you should build, how you should build it, what you should do, how fast you should do it, what is success, what's not success. The ones who survive are ones who can filter the bullshit and not let the noise win on this one. And I let that win on season 1. And so during the break, I've had a lot of time thinking about what the podcast actually was to me versus what I was trying to make it. It was never supposed to be a growth hack. It was never supposed to be a pipeline generator. It was never supposed to be a brand play for Clockwork, my company. It was a creative outlet. It was therapy. It was something that I needed to do to manage my shit. And it was me sitting down, processing out loud the insane experience of literally building a complete company from absolutely nothing. Somewhere along the way, I turned my therapy into content strategy. And that went to shit. That doesn't work. I also thought a lot about who I was making it for. In the beginning, the answer was simple. I was making the podcast, making every episode for the version of me from 5 years ago who felt completely alone running, starting, scaling a company, being a Jordanian immigrant in the US selling to accountants. That person doesn't need a polished production. That person needs to hear, yeah, dude, I went through that. I did that shit. And here's how I survived it. Or here's what you shouldn't do because I did it and you should learn. My dad always told me a smart person learns from their mistakes. A genius learns from others. And so my objective for the Real Slim Fady Show is to make every listener a genius. And so the break really taught me that silence has its own value. I didn't owe anyone some weekly episode because my marketer wanted me to. The pressure I felt to keep producing was all self-imposed and developed by myself. And removing that pressure helped me reconnect with why I actually enjoy doing this in the first place and why I'm even here and why I love building a podcast, even though it's now become one of the most douchey things that a guy could do. Nobody ever built something great by committee. Not a company, not a product, and definitely not a podcast. And I lost sight of that. So what season 2 is going to look like is the Real Slim Fady. It's the Real Slim Fady Show again. It's going back to the real ethos of why I started it, the original motivation. It's going to be talking about personal health, talking about entrepreneurship, talking about all the real shit for people that are in the trenches or even thinking about getting in the trenches. That's it. That's the show. I'm not trying to be some Joe Rogan thing that is going to be this multi-million-dollar production. I'm trying to be the friend who's a few steps ahead of you on the same path and is willing to tell you where the potholes are. Some episodes will just be me working through something out loud the way that I used to, talking through things. I'm a talker. I love to talk through problems, talk through situations. And those were the episodes that people connected with the most anyways. And those are the most rewarding for me because it allows me to get it out. But some will be conversations, but only with people I genuinely give a shit to talk to. Not strategic guests, not prospects, not pipeline, not because I'm booking them because their name looks good on a thumbnail or their email list is a large email list. That's not going to be the real driving force of who or why or what is on the Real Slim Fady Show. And getting back to a regular cadence is exciting for me. When I had to do it, it became something that became an obligation. I didn't like that. And for me, the topics are going to come from lived experiences, all the shit that I've done. I'm 37 years old now, and my entire life has been dedicated to building a successful career. What does that even mean? What's actually happening at Clockwork? Lessons from almost 15 years of startups, working at the biggest aerospace company in the world. The stuff I'm actively wrestling with currently, not manufactured bullshit thought leadership that you see in haiku on LinkedIn. If I had a brutal board meeting, I might talk about that. If I learned something about managing my team, good team members, bad team members, challenging team moments, vendors, whatever it may be, we'll get into it. If I'm struggling with something personally, I've always been an open book, but I'm not going to pretend like everything is good. I'm going to get back to being the Real Slim Fady Show. And I'm going to talk about things outside of business. Season 1, the reason I started Clockwork is to help mental health and identity and what it means to be some Jordanian kid building something in America. I want to go deeper on all that stuff. My personal health transformation. I mean, few people can talk about having lost 100 pounds. And the founder journey and the business journey, it's a human journey. We're all people at the end of the day. And separating those things is part of what makes this so hard for so many people. And so when you actually think about what that journey looks like, that's what I want to share. And so my promise on the Real Slim Fady Show is if you hit play, you're going to get the real version. No filter, no bullshit, no agenda, no performance, no prospect, no pipeline. That's the deal. And if an episode doesn't feel like that, call me out. There's no shortage of ways that you can contact me. And if I'm going to ask you to spend 20 minutes with me, I owe you the truth and not some performative thing that I'm doing to start building a pipeline for my company. And for me, I kind of want to go back to the feeling of gratitude. I want to thank the people who have reached out to me during the break asking when the next episode was coming out, that they even re-listened to episodes. I still can't believe that we still get listeners that are new all over the world, which is amazing. And some of you have sent me DMs, brought it up at events. Some of you have, texted me directly, called me directly. That meant more to me than any of these listener numbers ever did. And so knowing that the conversations we had in season 1 actually landed with the people that I want them to land with, that's fuel for season 2. And I cannot be more excited to be locked back in to do exactly what I need. And that's really the thing. Like this episode, especially, is as much for me as it is for anyone listening. Saying all of this out loud makes it real. It holds me accountable. It gets me back in the seat of doing what I need to do. And I can't come back in 3 episodes and start chasing some bullshit trends or having some potential partner or anything like that, because I just told all of you that I'm not going to do that. And that's by design. So if you're someone who's putting something out into the world, whether it's a podcast, a company, a service, a product, a creative project, a business, whatever it is, and you feel like it's drifted from why you started it and you're burnt out, you don't think there's another path, it's not too late to course correct. Stepping away is not a failure. Pivoting is not a failure. Coming back with clarity is the whole point. And I've teased this a couple times during this conversation. The next episode, I'm going to talk about my 100-pound health transformation, that journey, what that actually looked like. And I'm genuinely fired up about it. I can't tell you how excited I am to even be doing season 2, let alone be able to share that story, that journey. It's something I haven't really shared that much. I used to share a lot more about it, and then I've gotten busy, but it's been on my mind for months and months and months. So if you want to learn more about that journey, check in on the next episode. But really the biggest thing is I spent a lot of time trying to be the podcast other people wanted me to make. Turns out the Real Slim Fady Show was here the entire time. I just had to stop listening to everyone else, allowing those opinions to drive my decisions long enough to hear the Real Slim Fady. So could not be more excited for season 2. I'm extremely grateful for everyone listening, and I will catch you next time.